On Giants, Mounds, Monsters, Myth and Man, or Why We Want to Be Small by Brad Lockwood.
Copyright 2010, Brad Lockwood, all rights reserved.
Membership in the Freemasons has fallen by nearly 80% over the past century.
Footnote.
According to an October 4th, 2006 article in the New York Times, membership in the Freemasons has fallen from a high of 346,413 in 1929 in New York to around 54,000 currently. These numbers are available to the public. Not so pervasive, not seductive, it seems, except in the minds of those seeking conspiracies.
Not so secret, yet still misunderstood, the Freemasons are actually actively and all too publicly recruiting new members. An actor friend of mine was astonished to receive an introductory letter and thought it was all a joke. Obviously, the Freemasons' import continues to grow in imaginations, even as its actual membership shrinks. Yet this one group remains the source of endless conspiracy theories, like trying to control all ancient technologies, government, money, etc., etc. The Jews must really appreciate the Freemasons, so they aren't only to blame. Even more troubling, if not further undermining such arguments and supposed finds, is the reality that this website, Burlington UFO and Paranormal Center, www.burlington+news.net, also carries a detailed expose on the Kossuth Giants. Supposedly unearthed in Kossuth, Iowa, a massive tomb was found by, quote, Marvin Rainwater, a local farmer, end quote, and, quote, measuring 188 feet on each side, end quote. Like too many stories, especially on the internet, this one doesn't pass muster. A Cattaraugus County historian, Dean Ben Scooter, a fifth-generation descendant of the fourth family to establish in the area, has never heard of any Marvin Rainwater or any giant tomb. Understandably, he expressed frustration that the area's real attractions go unnoticed, while an unfounded yet fantastic fraud like this one is being perpetuated. If anything, maybe this story offers further insight into the minds of giant and alien and Bigfoot enthusiasts. Most are set in forgotten places, depopulated Iowa in this case, and the discoveries are said to have occurred early on, during their heyday. Having few residents to remember makes documentation all the more difficult, as these tall tales gain traction due to a region's fading position and past. In the end, I contacted the webmaster to inform her that the Kossuth Giants didn't exist. Sorry, but the story on your website is a hoax. Thanking me, she said she'd update the site to declare it as such, but she still hasn't, as of mid-March 2010. To the exasperation of residents and a Kossuth historian and those trying to filter frauds from real clues like myself, people can still read of Marvin Rainwater's discovery of a giant tomb in Iowa today, uninformed and none the wiser, despite findings all too easy to check and confirm to the contrary. Frauds are so prevalent that it should be no surprise the internet has become a playground for tall tales. Contests for, quote, amazing archaeological discoveries, end quote, are now being held, with the website worth100.com offering daily, quote, creativity, end quote, contests with cash and product prizes for winners, including one such award for fake photos of giants and or huge skeletons. So popular was this contest that even National Geographic had to run an article about it, adding that the amazing and immense remains in the photos were fake, not fact. Other tall and all too bizarre tales have more innocent explanations. As said earlier, one website mentions an account of giant skeletons being unearthed with horny knobs on their foreheads.
Footnote.
Mason+Winfield, teacher and writer, as well as, and I quote, ranked several times among the Buffalo area's top 10 tennis players, end quote, was the author of this intriguing online citation. Also the author of several books on ghosts, native lore, and the supernatural. Winfield unapologetically favors the fantastic over facts. One imagined story from his 1999 book, A Ghost Hunter's Journal, describes an attack by Bigfoot, which he, of course, fended off heroically, while his voluminous collections of other tales make him perhaps one of the most haunted people alive.
Discovered on Spanish Hill in 1916 near Sayre, Pennsylvania, this myth has grown over the years despite contemporary documentation outright disproving it. To highlight how easy it is to fact-check any story, it took me 10 minutes to locate an authority, Deborah Twigg, an archaeologist in the Susquehanna Valley, and she emailed me the truth 10 minutes later. The skulls didn't have horny knobs at all, rather antlers placed atop during internment. According to page 205 of Louise Wells Murray's 1921 book, Aboriginal Sites in and Near Tioga.
While the writer was present, one of the men working a grave exclaimed, "There are horns over his head." Mr. Skinner said that indicated chieftainship. Later, this was found to be a bundle burial, completely covered with antlers of Virginia deer. A passing visitor, however, heard the exclamation and attempted to verify it by interrogating a fun-loving Maine workman. And the story grew and was printed from coast to coast that one or more skulls had been found with horns growing from the forehead.
Despite yet another clarification of yet another tall tale, I heard an, quote, expert, end quote, on giants, alien giants no less, coming from an investigative journalist, self-declared no doubt, citing the Sayre skulls with horny knobs on their foreheads as proof of his theories in early February 2010 on Coast to Coast AM. A follow-up email to him offering the original article and actual truth behind this unusual yet obviously misconstrued find has still gone unanswered. Nevertheless, countless listeners heard the Sayre story and will continue to believe it, as well as this, quote, expert, end quote, despite much evidence to the contrary. Similarly, T. Apoleon Cheney's measurements of big bones, found in Cattaraugus in 1876, were offered as proof by the state geologist in Albany into the late 1930s, and his sketches and added text printed and reprinted in at least 5 versions from 1860 to 1889. Niche, name, titles, etc. in place, the minister's son was sought out for speeches and to attend excavations afar. The mass success and acceptance of his work, accounts of giant skeletons and advanced technologies in antiquity, also led to honors from several colleges. By 1863, Cheney, the self-learned civil engineer, was referring to himself as Dr. Cheney, or following his name on letters and publications with LL.D, Latin, meaning legum doctor, or doctor of laws, a common inference to an honorary degree. Even Esquire, as found on a letter in early 1868, writer William Gilmore Simms addressing it to T. Apoleon Cheney, Esquire. It is not known, and unlikely, whether Cheney received any law degree. Only several honors for his writings and speeches, and yet, within hardly 5 years, he had become Dr. T. Apoleon Cheney, civil engineer, LL.D, Esquire, etc. But it is essential to note that L.H. Evarts cites him only as Mr. Cheney in his own book, published in 1879, 2 decades after Cheney's breakthrough work was first released. It seems that Evarts didn't care too much for honorary degrees, while another tempering of Cheney's zealous nature is found in the book's preface by Evarts.
This paper mentions, among other works, certain curious excavations, the description of which, being somewhat obscure, is given verbatim.
L.H. Evarts may have been dependent on Cheney's earlier work to document history of Cattaraugus, New York, but he still chose to quote from, rather than elaborate on and thus endorse, Cheney's own words.
Coming up next.
On Giants. Upon my suggestion to him whether there might be some mistake as to their extraordinary or gigantic size, he answered emphatically that they were giants.